Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another week of fantasy football. It's another week here in the parable of Henry Ruggs. We're about to be getting into week 8. We're going to be previewing the matchups for this week of fantasy football. And we are now officially halfway through the season in the parable of Henry Ruggs. So we're actually going to do something a little different. We're going to preview some playoff matchups as well. And so with that being said, you know the drill. Here's the standings for this week. We've got the Devengers sitting at 6-1. They lost their first game of the season, but since then they've gone on to win 6 straight. Pig Six in the second, with their only loss, of course, being to the Devengers. We got a 3-way tie for third. Then we've got 3 more teams tied at 4-3. Then 2 teams sitting at 3-4. Then the Benson Boars at 2-5. Now here's a guy at 1-6, and of course Tomato Town at 0-7. Nothing new for that team there. That's how we're looking so far. And now we're actually going to go ahead and get into the playoff standings right now. 6 teams make the playoffs. Here they are. Right now we've got, of course, the Devengers and Pig Six on bye weeks. If the playoffs started today, we would have Madison Beer's Daddy taking on Rugs and Alcohol, and then Michael Penix taking on Dak D's Nuts in Yo Mouth. With the first team being out of the playoffs, that would be Evan team right now. But we'll see. We'll see if things stay that way. Because Evan team, they've got Jamar Chase on their team. He's been getting better and better week by week with his new quarterback, Joe Flacco. So we'll see if they stay at 7. It'll be interesting to see, something for us to keep our eye on. That's how we're looking so far. So let's get into the matchups. With the first game of week 8, we've got App is Stupid taking on Now Here's a Guy. App is Stupid sitting at 4-3. Now Here's a Guy sitting at 1-6. Their only win being against Tomato Town. App is Stupid. They've won their last 2 games, but in both those games, their opponents have not broken the 100-point threshold. So something to keep in mind, their opponents haven't been playing very good against them lately. In fairness to them, they can only play who's on the schedule. But at the same time, just something to keep in mind. Also, Now Here's a Guy has not been playing well at all this year. Tua Tagovailoa was their quarterback last week. He scored -1 points for them. And in fairness to them, they still managed to put up 105, a decent number, but still resulted in a loss. The key thing, though, for them this week, Lamar Jackson is questionable to play Sunday. He might come back and play for them. If he's able to come back, if he's able to go, I'm taking Now Here's a Guy in this game. But if he can't go, I don't see any way that they have a chance of beating App is Stupid this week. And with our second matchup in week 2, we've got Pig Six taking on Dak D's Nuts in Your Mouth. 2 teams have been playing really good football recently. Pig Six at 6-1, Dak D's Nuts in Your Mouth 5-2. Dak D's Nuts in Your Mouth, though, they've got to recover. They need to lock in. Last week they lost to No Mo Juice, 100 points to 120 points. Now, I will say, in fairness to them, they were without Puka Nacua, Mika Egbuka, and Amarian Hampton. 3 big-time players for them. Mika Egbuka is coming back for them, so that'll be huge for them this week, but they're still without Nacua and Hampton. Meanwhile, Pig Six, recently they added a player last week to their lineup that was huge for them, Rashee Rice, coming back from suspension, dropping over 20 points for them. That was huge, as they were able to beat Rugs and Alcohol in a massive game. So stay tuned. Look for things to continue that way for Pig Six. Honestly, I'm taking Pig Six in this game to beat Dak D's Nuts in Your Mouth. In our third game of week 8, we've got Evan team taking on No Mo Juice. Evan team, a team that's 4-3, and No Mo Juice, a team that's 3-4. And before we get in this matchup, I need to issue a formal apology to No Mo Juice. Last week I said this team was just a bottom feeder, a team that just pretty much didn't even belong in the league and had no chance against Dak D's Nuts in Your Mouth. And they went out there and they won that game very convincingly, in fact. I will say Dak Dees did have some injuries, and I think if those players were not injured, they would have won. But that's part of the game. Credit to No Juice. And I did forget to consider the fact that they had a very big-time player returning that week. And that player's name was CeeDee Lamb. And he's back for this team now, and he scored 22 points for them last week. A huge performance from CeeDee Lamb. Look for that to continue this week. This team, they're a different team now, very clearly, but they're also going up against Evan team, and this team last week in Evan team, they scored 179 points, the most of any team last week. So they're No Juice, while they're riding high off last week's win, they're going up against a very tough opponent this week still. So I wouldn't exactly say that they're going to win this week. I'm actually going with Evan team this week in this matchup. And now with the fourth matchup of Week 8, we've got Madison Beers Daddy versus Tomato Town. Madison Beers Daddy at 5-2, coming off a bye week, versus Tomato Town, still 0-7, still winless. But they actually might have a chance this week. Now, I will say once again, and I've said this before, they've been favored to win a lot of their matchups, but the game is not played on paper, it's played on the grass. That's why this team is 0-7 and not 7-0. So we'll see going into this week, and the reason they're favored to win this matchup is in large part due to the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs is on bye week, as well as Davante Adams. Two big-time players from Madison Beers Daddy. We'll see if they can survive this week. At this point in this league, it's just a matter of just not losing to Tomato Town. Nobody wants to be that team that gives Tomato Town their first win of the season. So they do not want to lose this game. But we'll see. Tomato Town, they've recently made a change at QB. Jackson Dart, last week he scored 28 points for them. That was huge. But once again, they just could not get a win. So we'll see. I like Tomato Town to win this game, honestly. But anything can happen. They haven't been able to win a game yet. I would not be surprised if they lose this game. In our fifth game of Week 8, we've got the Swisher Sweets taking on the Benson Boars. The Swisher Sweets sitting at 3-4, Benson Boars at 2-5, and I've got to say I've got a clear favorite in this one, and that is the Swisher Sweets. Especially after last week's showings. I mean, if you watched the Benson Boars game, you didn't really see much going on. I mean, we saw a team that put up a season low for the entire league in points, and that was a 45-point showing from the Benson Boars. I mean, we're talking about a team in which the highest scoring player for them was actually the Rams defense. The Rams defense put up the most points for this team with 9. Not a single player in double figures for this team. Really, really embarrassing loss there for the Benson Boars. Just humiliating loss right there. But they've got to recover, because this week, I mean, if they don't get their heads screwed on straight, they could be going down to 2-6. They have a chance to win this game. Don't get me wrong, but they really got to focus up. That was not a good game last week. And the Swisher Sweets, we've talked about them before. This team's been a different team ever since they got Sam Darnold at quarterback. They've actually made a change recently. They're going with Carson Wentz at quarterback this week. So, and that's because Sam Darnold can't play this week. He's on bye week. But this team, I mean, they've been a different team. They lost last week to Michael Penix. But that team, they're one of the elite teams in this league. So if I'm the Swisher Sweets, I'm not hanging my head about that loss. I'm just trying to get right and get ready for this game. But give me the Swisher Sweets to win this game. And now our last game, we've got the game of the week. We've got two teams that are both in the playoffs right now going head-to-head. We've got the Devengers taking on Rugs and Alcohol. The Devengers at 6-1, Rugs and Alcohol 5-2. This is going to be a good game for sure. Make sure you tune into this game. Rugs and Alcohol been an explosive offense recently, averaging 150 in their past 3 games before last week. Last week, they actually didn't do that well. They scored about 109, which for league standards, that's not terrible. but for their standards, certainly not what they expect going into a fantasy football game. So they look for them to bounce back this week. Honestly, maybe look for them to play a little angry this week with a chip on their shoulder. The Avengers, though, I mean, not really much to say about them. Any game any matchup they've been in, they just find a way to win. I mean, sometimes they win by scoring 85 points, but I mean, at the end of the day, they find ways to win. So I mean, and that's what fantasy football is about. Because you could score 130 points and lose, but they find a way to win their games. And honestly, though, I don't see how they deal with the firepower of Rugs and Alcohol. I just don't. I don't think they have the pieces to do it. If they can do it, it's going to take another Bo Nix legacy game. Last week, Bo Nix dropped 40 points for the Avengers. I just don't see him doing that again. And you can't count on Bo Nix to play like that. So give me Rugs and Alcohol to beat the Avengers and knock the Avengers down to 6-2. Also important to note on bye week this week, we've got Michael Penix on bye week. They are 4-3 right now in this league, and honestly, this bye week couldn't have been timed any better for them. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who are also on bye weeks this week. So the fact that the bye week was timed this well, I think head coach Caleb Jackson couldn't be happier with the timing of this. So a big week for them just to recover and get their minds right. Right now they're sitting at 8th in this league. Just on the outside looking in. We'll see if things stay that way, though. This team, they've been putting up lots of points. This has been a very explosive offense. So I honestly don't see that things staying that way. I think they find a way to sneak into the playoffs, maybe like that 5th or 6th position. But yeah, something to keep our eyes on for sure.